So, greetings. Kathy and I are on our first vacation of the year, and this is where we're spending it. Just taking in all the glory that God has given us. I mean, who can paint a picture more like this, more than God? And so we're taking our soul care seriously. And so this morning, instead of a devotional, I thought I'd do something just a little bit lighter. I've been a pastor for over 40 years now, so there's a lot of stories I could tell and some that I can't tell. But I want to tell my favorite wedding story, my favorite funeral story, and then my favorite funny story. And just kind of let it be a little more lighthearted, if you will. And so my favorite wedding story. My church in Marion, we had a small little wedding, just a little gathering, nothing special. It was a second marriage for the husband and wife. The bride had told me how nervous she was going into it. So we're having a nice little ceremony, not many people gathered. And so it came time in the solo. Well, we did, again, it was a very simple service. There wasn't any special music. There was just somebody in the sound booth putting a CD in to play the solo. With my hearing being what it is, I was thinking, well, this is nice. It sounds good music. But I noticed more and more people looking at each other and starting to giggle a little bit and kind of wonder. So I knew something was going on, but I couldn't tell what. After this wedding ceremony was over, I found out what had happened. The person in the sound booth had put in the wrong song. And the song that he put in was, "If we can't be lovers, can't we be friends?" Maybe not a bad song for a wedding after all, but not your everyday wedding song. But then my funeral story, also in Marion. I was in High Point this time and was called back. A lady in the church in Marion, she always liked me, and I was her favorite pastor. She asked me to come back and do her father's funeral. I didn't know the man, but I learned all about him and put together a glowing tribute. It's kind of like that wedding. During the service, and while I'm giving the message of honoring this great man, I noticed several people looking at each other and some kind of smiling, little quizzical look, if you will. And so when I finally get in the car to make the way to the cemetery, the host pastor, he's in the car with me. He said, "Bill, that was a great message, beautiful tribute. Problem was you said the wrong name for the person the entire time." And I'm thinking, when we get to that cemetery, is there somewhere they can bury me as well? Most embarrassing moment, probably one of many in my ministry. But then the funniest story. My very first church, I was there for 10 years. So this is two things you need to know. This is the very last Sunday after 10 years. So all the emotions, all the crowd, everything coming together, the last service. And also that we broadcast our service live on the radio. So during that service that day, with all going on, I was baptizing 3 young boys. And in that church, we always use hip waders under the robe. And so that made it very easy to just change once the baptism was over. You didn't have to change your pants or anything. Everything was dry. And so for some reason, I had done many baptisms through the years. Never had a problem with the hip waders. But for some reason that day, the hip waders started leaking on me. And so the first problem was to even get out of the baptistry with the weight of the water filling my hip waders. But I finally got out, and then I had to make a critical decision. Do I go back into the sanctuary with my pants soaking wet the whole time, or do I make a mad dash over to the parsonage, which is right next door? And so I'm thinking, I can't go out soaking wet, so I make the mad dash to the parsonage. First pants I see are these khaki pants. I pull off my blue suit pants, throw on the khaki pants, rush back into the sanctuary, praying the whole time that the offertory hymn and the children's sermon is unusually long. And I come back in, I'm huffing and puffing, I'm out of breath. I hold on to the pulpit. And that's when what happened that people talked about for years to come. Holding on, out of breath, I look out, people listening on the radio, and I say to them, "I just wet my pants." Can you imagine what people listening on the radio were thinking? He just wet his pants. But then part of the story is I didn't have time to change my underwear. I just threw on the first pair of pants that I found. And so people told me later they can notice people in the choir looking and kind of elbowing each other and pointing at my behind. And because I still have very wet, soaked underwear on. And so increasingly my pants from the bottom down started getting increasingly wet as the sermon went on, and the people in the choir were pointing at it. So that was my illustrious conclusion of a 10-year ministry of my church in Warsaw. So that's just some stories I can tell, and there's so many more. If you need a devotional this morning, then I'll leave you with this. Psalm 121. I lift up mine eyes to the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help is in the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. May you know some gift for your soul today as well. So love all of you. Be back next week.